everybody. This is Jackie Orr from NASCAP. We thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We ask that everyone that you mute yourselves on your end, because on our end you are all unmuted, so we can avoid any unnecessary noise. We ask you to mute yourselves. And also remember, please do not put us on hold, because otherwise we will hear music. So we wanted to make sure that all of you were unmuted so that this could be a conversation. So at any point in time, if you have any questions or you want more clarification or want to share a comment, then please go ahead and do so. So we're going to move to the next slide. And Janae is joining us today as well, and she has things in the background, so she is going to be one of our listeners. So Edie and I will be taking the lion's share of the presentation today. So basically what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be walking through the Dear Colleague letter that got sent to all of you a couple weeks ago, and it was specific on Module 3, and it talked about a two-stage implementation. So we're going to be walking through the pieces of the Dear Colleague just to make sure that we all understand it, and if we have any questions, Katie and I are hoping to answer those questions, but certainly if there's some that we can't answer and that we need to present to OCS, we will do that. So one of the things we want to do is identify and discuss any points of potential confusion. We've already heard that there might be a few of those, so we'll hopefully work those out for you. And then, as I mentioned, that if there's issues or questions or we need more clarification, then we'll certainly go back to OCS and ask them for further information to share with all of you. So I'll kick off this, and then I'll turn it over to Katie. As I mentioned, the Dear Colleague letter was released on April 6th, and it did announce the two-stage implementation of Module 3. So we have the two-stage approach is basically talks about a full submission and also a partial submission in year one. So we'll get into more of those details in a couple minutes. And then it speaks to the full submission of Module 3 in year 2. And it was very clear in the Dear Colleague that it talked a lot about year 1 as a training and technical assistance year. So we will also be providing more information about that as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and she's going to talk about the purpose and then talk a little bit too about the language that they use about Reimagine HHS.
Thank you, Jackie. And just a reminder to everybody, if you have questions, you're all unmuted, you can just jump in. Of course, you can always put questions in the Q&A or the chat boxes, and we will hopefully be able to answer those. So we organized this discussion around each of the DCL, so we are just going to be walking through those with you. What you can see on your screen is actual language from the DCL. The purpose of the DCL is to provide an update on the implementation plans for Module 3, specifically the annual report, the community level module. We highlight here that there are no changes to the content or the data points in Module 3, so that's an important piece. And OCS being they, released this DCL with an update on the implementation because they want to ensure that all states and eligible entities have the technological functionality for submitting Module 3. And they also want to ensure that projects that are included in their report are focused on community-level outcomes. So they've placed a lot of stress on ensuring that what they receive are actual community-level initiatives. Thank you. So as we go forward in the DCL, this piece stood out to a lot of people that we heard from, this Reimagining HHS. They said in the DCL that this is an ongoing effort is consistent with HHS's Reimagining HHS priority on new innovative strategies to help Americans with low incomes find gainful employment while providing them with a sense of purpose, personal dignity, and independence. So we heard from you questions about, what is this Reimagining HHS? Where did it come from? Things along those lines. Actually had to do a little bit of research ourselves to acquaint ourselves with this initiative. So this was an initiative that was started by Tom Price, and Azar has continued with its implementation. So under this initiative, Tom Price called for an examination of everything the HHS does. At that time, he gave all department heads 90 days to come back with him of ways of doing this work more efficiently and effectively. He convened 5 work groups across HHS focusing on HHS work. Some of them, on healthcare, some of them on PRs, and then from those work groups, they identified 6 strategic shifts. So they went and they put together a strategic plan for HHS. Highlighted here are the things that really affect us and our network, leveraging the power of data and putting people at the center of HHS programs. So this is what we believe to be guiding a lot of the emphasis on data, data-driven results, outcomes, and some of the language that you see that we'll talk about further in this DCL, such as the word appropriate, correct, and accurate. So that's where this is coming from. I'm a second to see if there's any questions on this. No? Okay.
Oh, all right. So and I'll pick up this piece here on the 2-stage implementation. So it was clear.
You're breaking up. Oh, I will jump in until we get Jackie back. The DC mentions this 2-stage implementation that OCS is committed to ensuring high-quality, community-level outcome information in the CSCD annual report process. Ensure that all Module 3 submissions submitted by CSG-eligible entities are focused on community-level outcomes with appropriate indicators. So in the previous slide, I talked about, the Reimagining HHS, looking at doing their work better and differently and more effectively, et cetera. So that's where we think of this language is coming from. The DCL, for folks that may not know, means Dear Colleague Letter. So in introduction to the plan for the 2-stage implementation, talking about what I mentioned earlier, that OCS is looking for initiatives that are actually community-level initiatives. That's been a big focus in the language that we've seen so far. Back?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Okay, nothing changed on my end, but that's good that you can hear me. Okay, so let me know if something changes. I want to move on to the next slide. So here, again, and Katie mentioned that DCL is Dear Colleague. We just shortened it so we didn't have to keep on saying Dear Colleague Letter. But this is more information specifically on Stage 1. So Stage 1 talks about will be a training and technical assistance year for Module 3 content. as you can see on this slide, we have FY 2017 highlighted because it's actually supposed to be funding year 2018 data. So some of you had already pointed that out to us when the Dear Colleague came out, and you are absolutely correct. And I actually saw Jonna Holden the other day at the Region 1 initiative, and I pointed that out to her, and she said that they've been recognized it as well. So that is that's just an error. So just know that that's actually 2018 data. This year, it indicates that OCS will work with ASCASP and other technical assistance partners. And again, going back to what Katie was talking about, to make sure that all submissions are appropriate for inclusion in Module 3. OCS is going to work with us to review all submissions and provide a round of feedback to the state offices on the correctness and completeness of the Module 3 submission. That is the piece of stage 1. Now, what that round of feedback is going to look like, that process hasn't been worked out in any specific detail as of this point, but as we do more, as we learn more, then we will obviously be keeping all of you informed about that. On stage 1, key activities during this year include, now if you'll notice, there's 2 submission processes within stage 1. So any community action agency that's implementing a community level change initiative in Module 3 will be able to complete all of Module 3, which is the community initiative status form, including the NPIs, and the strategies. So they will be able to submit a completed module for each initiative to the CSBG state office, and then they will review and submit to OCS March 31st of 2019. So that complete submission is something that we've just kind of always assumed would happen from when the annual report got approved. So it's just, kind of business as usual. An agency that's doing community level work will complete that entire community initiative status form, including the domains, the NPIs, and the strategies, and be submitted to all of you, and then that will go to and submitted to OCS by the end of March of next year. The kind of new piece is this partial submission. So we're encouraging all the agencies to complete all of Module 3. At a minimum, agencies are asked to complete questions 1 through 7. That is, and I'll read the language to you so we can be clear about it, an eligible entity that is currently implementing a community level change initiative requires additional assistance in the identification of appropriate outcome measures can provide responses to questions 1 through 7 of the community initiative status form and basically submit that by March 31st, 2019. If you look at the community initiative status form, those questions relate to the name of the initiative, the year that the initiative is in, the problem identification that the initiative is going to address, the goal and the agenda of the initiative, as well as the domains and the NP ultimate expected outcomes, or any NPIs. And then last question for question 1 through 7 would be the identified community. So at that point, that would be completed. So the agency would be able to complete questions 1 through 7, submitted to the state office, and then to OCS by March 31st of 2019. Are there questions about that stage 1? Oh, for stage 1. Finish this. Anybody before I go on? I didn't want to jump. Okay.
There was one question, Jackie.
Do you want to go on?
So in stage 1, we report everything. It depends. There's 2 options. So one, Muska, can you go back a slide, please? You have the option of doing a complete submission. If the ET has the capability of filling out the complete community initiative status form, then do that. Or if they require additional technical assistance, they can do a partial submission and submit to questions 1 through 7 only in the community initiative status form. So this is for 1. They could do the complete submission, partial submission, and of course, if they're not engaged in community level work, then they'd not complete community initiative status form. The petition is responding only to questions 1 through 7 in the community initiative status form. Anything else you want to add to that, Jackie? That is correct. In a partial submission, no outcomes would actually be reported. It would just be the fields that Jackie mentioned previously, question 1 through 7.
It's asked you to, but says as selecting an NPI.
It's a good point. You would select the NPI, but would not actually report on it. And where does the reporting occur, Jackie? Do you remember which question the reporting actually occurs in? 12 or 11 or 12?
It's like, it's like 13 or 14. I can't, actually, you know what? Just give me a second because I had it right here. It is the reporting on the community initiative status form. It actually, okay, it is question number 12.
Yes.
So you would report, as Katie just mentioned, so the questions 1 through 7. So question 6 is what it says is ultimate expected outcome. And that's where the NPI, the National Performance Indicator, would be selected. But the reporting, as Katie just mentioned, would not happen, would not occur.
And full submission would be completing all of the community initiative status form, and that's assuming that you'll have data to report at that point in time. But it'd be the full community initiative status form, and the partial submission is responding only to questions 1 through 7. Yes.
Oh, this is Karen Quackenbush in Salt Lake.
Hi, Karen.
Hey, okay, so I just have one question. I get it that, it's kind of like people can put a placeholder in with a partial submission for complete. Mm-hmm. But my question is on complete, and just to make sure, because this is on our training before this Dear Colleague letter, our training and understanding of Module 3. Module 3 is still expected, or not expected, could be multi-year. In other words, like the status form has final status as number 15 or whatever, but you might just be year 1 of a year 5, out of a 5-year initiative, right? There's still room where you're not going to have necessarily all your data in, but it doesn't mean that you're on track. I guess that's what I wanted clarification on. It seems like they are giving opportunity for people to create a placeholder, but if you haven't, whatever, but they still have option for people who are involved, but they might not have their data actually available yet because it's multi-year. I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding that.
That is correct. Yeah, you could have a multi-year initiative. In some cases, you might have data that's only available once every 5 years, so you may not have anything to report this year. the intent of this goes back to the training and technical assistance year, that there's an understanding that not every entity who's doing community level work have the capacity to complete the entire community initiative status form.
Katie, this is Lisa. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, hi. So would that be in that situation where they would be completing a partial? Okay. Okay. All right, great.
Hi, Jeremy. This is Janae.
Yep.
I wanted to say that Karen also, and for everybody, that with Module 3, it is understood that we would have the initiative status page turn, but you would not have outcome data to report each year. And just want to reiterate that, Karen, you're understanding that you would still be able to turn in the status form, but you may not have outcomes until year 2, but they're still working towards that initiative, and that's why it's important that we know that you're doing that kind of work. Does that help?
Thank you.
Can I be heard?
Yeah.
Hi. That question for in about multi-years in the phases of work, like a 5-year stretch, and then you had made a comment about that, Katie. You got down the trajectory and you were saying maybe the example is every other year you have a reporting point of interest in your data. And then on the 3rd year there wasn't anything, but there was on the 4th. In that 4th year, would we still be encountering this language along the lines of partial submission, or would that change?
So the partial submission is only in stage 1 of this 2-stage implementation.
Okay. So future dates, like the 4th year in that scenario, you would just articulate that's how your data is structured.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Because that's a kind of a unique example. Thank you.
I guess we'll move on.
We have a question on this phase-in report and why we're doing this phase-in process. And is it, when we talk about appropriate and accurate data, it's trying to allow for more training and technical assistance to allow for true community-level initiatives. And that is one of the cases, is that when we've been going out and doing some of these trainings, I've had some agencies who are trying to still put in individual and family initiatives into the community one. And we want to be able to focus on what does it mean to be a community initiative. And we're reviewing these partial submissions and these ideas that we can have those conversations to ensure whether or not it needs to be in community or in family. And that with this process of the OMB clearance happening right after the submission, this will all allow us time to understand if we're missing some initiatives that we thought might have been individual and family, but that we can make the case are for actual community. So that's that kind of whole process to allow for this phase-in approach to really focus on the complexity of community initiatives and the work around it. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, that was well stated.
Yep.
Folks, we are moving on to the rest of stage 1. Next slide, please. So as Jackie mentioned earlier, there is this review process built in to stage 1. The CS will review preliminary information received and shared with the CSBG network. And we'll start with the CSBG network, the range and types of community-level initiatives implemented. So we don't know quite what that is going to exactly look like, but there is some type of information that will be reported out, keeping it probably pretty high level with talking about the types of the initiatives that were implemented. assistance. States and eligible entities may receive additional technical assistance from NASCAST and other partners identified by OCS. On initiative is appropriate for inclusion in Module 3. So that's going back to what Janae was talking about, that they're really looking at ways to ensure community-level initiatives are reported in Module 3. Additional technical assistance will be available to assist in identification of potential community-level outcome measures. It over to Jackie. Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, so this is, as you can see, there's two sections here, and they're both highlighted. So you brought this to our attention. So is the Stage 1, Module 3, Implementation Review and Technical Assistance. So both to the completion process. So this in Stage 1, note that any CSBG eligible entity implementing a community level change initiative and able to complete all of Module 3 will complete a module for each initiative to their CSBG state office to review and submit to OCS by March 31st of 2019. That's what we had always understood. And then look at Stage 2 for the full reporting. It's a little bit more vague here. All CSBG eligible entities that have a community level change initiative will submit Module 3 in its entirety through OLDC by March 31st, 2020. And when the dear colleague went out, we heard from some of you saying that they read that, that second piece about Stage 2 in the full reporting. The eligible entities would submit directly to OLDC and sort of bypass, if you will, the state offices. But as is noted here in the box, it's true that state offices will be submitting the report to OCS through OLDC. So in both cases, in Stage 1 with a completed submission, and in Stage 2, the full reporting, that state offices will be submitting Module 3 to OCS, to OLDC, and that it wouldn't come from agencies to OCS. So we just wanted to make it clear to all of you, since it's here, but we wanted to make sure that you understood that. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions?
There was about smart forms, and be a smart form for Module 3. And as Jackie just went through, states will be uploading that to OLDC.
Yeah. Any?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Question: When you say for feedback and for appropriateness, does that mean that it's more, getting clarification, or would there ever be a situation where you would go back to our eligible entity to say that's really not going to be appropriate for reporting?
Yeah, I imagine that indeed that in some cases, I think the word appropriate is kind of maybe not for my opinion to use here. And we could find, as I think Katie and Janae mentioned, that there is something that gets submitted by Community Action Agency in Module 3, and it's not quote-unquote appropriate for Module 3 because it really has a focus on family and individual level work, and it's not what we would consider community level work. So yes, we can see that there would be some cases where we would say, no, that really is more geared towards an individual and it is not community level work. It should not have been submitted through Module 3 with the initiative form.
Would they
have any?
So would them shifting it or getting it out? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to understand that process.
Yes, be us working with you all at the state offices and you working directly with your agencies to talk through that process with them.
Okay, all right.
And I'm going to add on to what Jackie's saying that that I think that this process that we couldn't easily just say yes or no, that we would have to have a conversation with you all and do some more digging and do a little bit more research into what's being reported as it's presented.
Okay.
And then when will the smart forms be available?
Later, though, we're looking, obviously before reporting, but by the end of the year. Question about weatherization. Yes, weatherization can be reported in Module 3 if the initiative is looking to improve housing stock in the community. There's no requirement that it has to be brand or ongoing or anything like that. So Module 3, if the entity selects to, they may report weatherization Module 3. One on the smart forms, in terms of planning, if you're using the Excel documents that are posted on our website, we'll be sitting in a good position to move over to a smart form. So that recommendation to use the already existing Excel documents on our website as you're planning to report. Okay, I guess we can move on then. Mm-hmm. Stage 2, full reporting. OCS will continue to work on technical refinements needed for building the technology to report Module 3 after the initial year of feedback. All CSBG eligible entities that have community-level change initiatives submit Module 3 in its entirety through OLDC by March 31st, 2020. So this is a mission in Stage 2. So there's no option for a partial submission in this stage. And the finding they say is OCS will work with the CSBG network to obtain input on procedures for ongoing submission and review of multi-year initiatives. So year 1 is the only year that has those different submission options. When we move into year 2, if an entity is doing community level work, they will need to complete the entire Module 3. Into full reporting, OCS believes that Module 3 will be a critical source of information regarding the long-term progress of the CSBG network in addressing challenging community-level issues. Therefore, OCS wants to ensure that the CSBG network has received sufficient training and technical assistance to provide a report that reflects community-level strategies and outcomes. So those with a reminder that year 1 is a training and technical assistance year, and that they are looking for the community level initiatives in Module 3. Any other questions about this? Okay, turn it over to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Just make sure, so don't rely on my phone. Okay, so this I think goes back to a couple of the questions we were asked a little bit early in the webinar. We know that many of you have included the Community Initiative Status Form, at least those beginning questions in your community action plans. So to some extent, we already have some preliminary information on what agencies are looking to report in Module 3. So what we've talked about in NASCAS is that us and NASCAS can work with a small number of state offices to do some of that training and technical assistance, reviewing some of those community initiative status forms before they are submitted to OCS in March of 2019. So then, you know, working on this from the back end, we can sort of get out in front of it and work with you and the agencies. And if you have any questions for us as you're getting the community initiative status forms and as you're reviewing those, and we can be providing training and technical assistance. So if you're interested, that being said, if you're interested in working with NASCAS and doing that training and technical assistance up front, and let Katie and I and Janae know, then we will reach back out to you, and then we'll let you know how that process will look and how it'll take shape. Are there any questions about that?
Karen in Salt Lake. Hey, just clarification on the language. So we did gather, it's just for us, community action plan is what our agencies develop with their needs assessment, and they have work plans in their annual contracts that they do with us. So in their application for their fiscal year 18, I did have them put all their targets, like put out there thinking about their modules as well as their targets for new reporting. So that's what you're looking at. For whatever we've got gathered so far, we can base to say this is doable, not doable, appropriate, appropriate.
Yeah, if you're interested in that, Karen, absolutely. And I'm looking at another question that says that some other states says that they actually have their community action plan where the agency submitted their targets, and that you can. You know, if you look at it and you have some questions about the work there, or that you have just questions about what sense and you want to hear back from us, or do you want to get a second opinion, then yes, we would certainly be able to do that with you. But to go on, this question here continues, it says we do or don't have to get approval ahead of submitting it. And no, you don't have to get approval ahead of, you submitting it through OLDC when it gets to that point in time. Does that make sense?
I think any specific guidance, though, otherwise, in terms of what they're looking for, it's clear in terms of what we shared with our agencies is that they needed to be able to access data, that it could be like a planning group they're involved with that are working toward change, but something that's actually getting measured.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Jackie, this is Tan in Massachusetts, and yeah, we were more than happy to share some of the community initiative information that we've gotten from our network, and they're actually in the process of revising their community action plan submissions since you came and did a training a couple weeks ago for us. But I just want to say I'm glad this slide in particular, because I was going to ask the question later on, or I guess make the comment later on, that really if you're sort of collecting this information through your community action plan, the training has to happen 6 to 9 months, 9 to 12 months before the annual report is due. So looking at full implementation March 2020, in my mind, I'm thinking I need to be training my network on, they kind of need to fix in their forms sometime in the summer of 2019, which is just a few months after you're going to get the stuff from the first year annual report submission. You know what I mean? So I'm glad to hear that you're trying to kind of reach out ahead of time and get a feel for what's coming in through the network, and we're willing to share our stuff.
Great, thank you, Tammy. And what you just said is exactly what we thought. You know, we're going to be getting it in March, and you know that's just a little. So that doesn't give us a lot of time, exactly. So if we could sort of get ahead of the game, that would be more preferable on our end.
Somebody asked about the Module 3 instructions. We will be releasing them very shortly. Like end of next week shortly.
Questions or some things we haven't answered yet? I'm looking at the questions, and it looks like we've answered all the ones that have come in written.
Yeah, we've gotten everything in that's come in through the chat.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other, I mean, we said at the beginning of the webinar that if we needed more clarification and we should talk to OCS about anything in particular, is there anything that you would like us to bring back to OCS?
Should we, this is Deep again, should we be communicating the stage one, or how would you maybe suggest we relay this type of information to our network in terms of how this is going to go? Because I saw that in the Community Action Partnership newsletter, they just sent the whole thing, and I'm like, oh, you know, I don't know if anybody's read it, but I'm just trying to figure out how should we, or, you know, make some kind of communication out to our network on this.
That question, because I did see that as well. This is Dawn from Idaho. And I'm waiting for this exchange today to kind of navigate that and gather consensus or feedback. Thank you.
Yep.
Jen, did we lose you again? Well, I'll just jump in. I mean, I think that depends. We know that we have some states that have really charged forward with Module 3 and, you know, may not need to even do partial submissions. So I think you'll need to assess where you are with your, you know, where your agencies are in your state and figure out what's best. I mean, if you've already charged on through, I mean, my personal opinion is to keep moving that direction and, you know, do full submissions. Now, if your agencies just aren't ready for it, then you may consider looking at some partial submissions. Maybe other agencies can do a full submission and, you know, go in that direction. Help at all?
I was just thinking in terms of especially that there could be more additional clarification, communication, and feedback for maybe those initiatives that might not be quite as clear or quote unquote deemed appropriate in terms of just, you know, giving our network some kind of heads up that there will be kind of this collaborative review process for initially any agencies reporting because it's the, maybe a little bit of resistance saying, well, what do you mean, or why, or what have you. That's why I was a little, I was really waiting for this to understand what we might need to communicate if we need to. And, Community Action Partnership sent the whole thing out, and, I don't know if anybody read it because we haven't heard anything from our network at least on this.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Katie, now?
Yeah, now we can, yeah. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Sorry about this. Just when you want it to work. I understand what you're asking, Disa, and I would communicate this with your network, and I think you have to all figure out the best way to do it, because I agree with you that, partnership, put it in their newsletter, and, how many people paid attention, we don't know. But I would be, as a state office person, would take the lead on ways that you can communicate with your network so they're very clear about what the information is in there. Going back and what Katie was saying, talking about that process, agencies that think that it makes more sense for them to do a partial submission and walk through that process. For those who've already done, included it in your community action plans, and your agencies have already been moving ahead with a full submission. It may not be as critical for them to have that information. For other of you states where you find that, that it makes more sense, that your agencies sort of kind of want to get, look at being able to, as we talked about before, maybe it makes sense, as someone used the word placeholder, and that, this partial submission works better and you can walk through that process with them. But I definitely think that you should, rather than having them be confused in your states, I definitely think that you should find some way of communicating that and then talking about what works best in your state.
Thank you.
Asked about if they should try to get their agencies to have it one community level project. There's an expectation from HHS, OCS, in terms of number of initiatives they get. As we walked through this your call letter, I heard loud and clear in there that if you're doing community level work, report on it. In terms of the number of community level community initiative status forms that they complete and the number of initiatives they report on, I think that's up to you all working with your agencies to identify what that is.
Yeah, I concur with Katie. To answer that question, try to get your eligible entities to work on at least one. There's no expectation of that at all. It goes back to the agency's community needs assessments and how they've identified those needs, and whether those needs, require an individual level approach, or whether those identified needs require a community level approach. And that's what it all goes back to. So there's certainly no expectation that an agency will have a community level initiative. That being said, there might be agencies that have more than one, and that's fine. And so it's just, we want them to be community level initiatives. And I think that's sort of kind of, when you look at the Dear Colleague, that's really the underpinning. I mean, that's really what it's saying, is that you want to make sure that those submissions to the community module 3 and the community initiative status form is addressing community level needs, have community level MPIs along with those strategies.
As Jackie and I have gone into your states and worked with your agencies on training, we also have heard a lot of agencies that are doing community level work that, they just haven't quite yet figured out how to be able to report it, how to get the baseline or other nuances. So I also know that there's a group that's working towards reporting as well.
The group where the partial submission makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, good point.
Anything? I just saw a question come in about NASCAS putting a list of sample projects that would be considered community level initiatives. I agree that would be helpful. When you see the instruction manual for Module 3, you will see that there is an example of a community level initiative, and I think that will help. In the, I believe, the education and domain, as well as the infrastructure and asset building domain. And then what we talked about at NASCAS, which we are currently working on, is creating a community level initiative, and not ourselves. I mean, these we've already received from a number of agencies, but putting together a community initiative this form based on what agencies are currently doing within each of the modules. So we will have one that you will be able to see housing, and one on civic engagement, and all those modules or all those domains that are contained in the modules. So it should help help the agencies understand and see community work in each of those domains with corresponding MPIs and strategies.
I was asked about if agencies are just in planning phases, would they report on the community level initiative status form? That's going to depend on how much of the planning phase they're in. I mean, if they're just contemplating something, or if they're still actively engaged in it. So I think that, unfortunately, a lot of our responses are this is a case-by-case basis, but I think you would have to work with the agency to identify what makes the most sense. At what phase are they actively engaged in the initiative?
I agree with that.
I think, we are right along with you all and your agencies in terms of learning what report is, what community level work is, and what it isn't. And I mean, I personally have every month it seems like I have a new understanding of Module 3 and what goes into community level work. I just appreciate all of these comments and these questions, and they're very similar to what Jackie and I get all the time, and even the questions that we ask each other as we're going through this work.
It's a process for all of us.
It is. Oh, well, I guess if there's nothing else, then as always, feel free to reach out to Jackie or me anytime with any questions. And of course, let us know if you have any follow-up questions to this particular webinar or other thoughts that we didn't consider or brought up. So in closing?
No, I don't. And Friday, and it's coming.
Friday.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.